Floods in Manitoba.
Toxic tailings
A major
ponds.
polluter.
Environmental groups have been warning about the danger.
You've heard the politicians, seen the news, and skimmed past the headlines. But you probably don't know what's really going on in the infamous Alberta tar sands.
Soaked ducts have begun to command.
MTV has teamed up with eco-warrior Emily Hunter to bring you the truth about Canada's oil. Emily's parents were some of the first radical activists in this country. They were co-founders of Greenpeace. And her dad battled against Russian and Australian whalers until the commercial slaughter of whales became illegal. He also risked his life protecting seals in Canada's north. But now Emily has taken over the eco-warrior reins. She was taken hostage in the Galapagos Islands while protecting wildlife. And she was a crew member aboard a Sea Shepherd anti-whaling campaign, a group some call eco-terrorists. But now, Emily is taking on her biggest challenge yet: finding the hard truth about the tar sands. Why?
Climate change is one of the defining challenges of our time.
Because Alberta has one of the largest tar sands deposits in the world. And we cash in over $11 billion from the project. But all that cash comes with a deadly side effect. Tar sand oil is harder to produce, which means more greenhouse gases, more floods, more tornadoes, and wild, unpredictable weather. All signs of climate change. That if we don't stop our addiction to oil now, climate change will become irreversible and cause catastrophic changes to our planet. This is Emily Hunter's journey into the belly of the beast, her quest for the truth about the tar sands, and her urgent plea for your attention.
Should I do that again?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You're recording now?
Yeah.
Okay. It's our biggest environmental crime in the world, and it's our scar on the planet, in terms of climate change, in terms of social injustice. So I fight on two fronts. I fight as an activist, and I also work as an eco-journalist, trying to get the environmental stories out there that aren't being heard a lot of the time. I recently wrote an eco-blog on this magazine, and the Alberta government barked because I made a connection with the toxins that are being poured into Athabasca River, downstream of the tar sands project, and that actually connecting to rare cancers with First Nations people. The Alberta government representative basically wrote a whole long letter saying there was no connection between toxins and killing of First Nations people. There's a lot more to this story of the tar sands than we're being told as Canadians. And I really want to find out the truth behind what's killing the First Nations people, the truth behind maybe what's destroying our planet, and really get at the heart of the tar sands issue.
After a day and a half of travel, the train stopped in Winnipeg where Emily caught up with an old friend and Sea Shepherd crewmate.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
When he's not fighting for animal rights, Dave works as a contractor and gave Emily the scoop about what his co-workers say about Fort McMurray, the home of the Alberta tar sands.
I've heard from people in the construction industry who've been out there and been back that it's a real boom town.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of money going around, a lot of drugs, a lot of prostitution, a lot of that going on too.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's a real sort of frontier town. So that's what I've been hearing through my friends in the industry.
The fact is there's a lot of people that work with the Alberta government. There's a lot of people that work in industry that are specifically there to not allow the story get out. I'm trying to get that story out.
After arriving in Edmonton, Emily made her way to Greenpeace activist Mike Hudima's house.
We're here to try and help stop one of the most environmentally destructive projects on the face of the planet, the Alberta tar sands.
Mike has ambushed Alberta Premier Ed Stelmach and definitely makes a good headline.
It's the third time in less than 3 weeks Greenpeace has broken into an oil sand site.
He let Emily crash at his place while she was in Edmonton.
Hi. After 3 days on the train, we've arrived finally at Edmonton. Yeah. I'm super excited to finally be here because the journey has begun. First impressions of Edmonton are it kind of seems like in northern Texas a little bit. A lot of signs of oil rigs and that oil is our friend. Even Karma Gas was one sign of a gas station. So I wonder why there's all this oil love. I'm sure we'll find out. Now, you were born here and raised here in Alberta. I mean, does it ever get kind of overwhelming and too tough for you to kind of see all this destruction happening around your home?
Definitely when you're looking at what we're facing in Alberta, where you're facing a government that's been in power for over 35 years, where you're looking at every single major multinational oil company having an investment in the tar sands. So you're looking at billions and billions of dollars worth of infrastructure and profit that you're trying to interfere with. It gets overwhelming very, very quickly. If people in downstream communities who are seeing members of their community die of cancer, or people in farming communities who are seeing their farms just being taken underneath them to make way for some of the tar sands infrastructure, if they can keep going, and if they can keep struggling, then I'm going to keep going too. And I'm going to be right there with them because my job is so much easier than their job.
Mike had pretty strong opinions about the tar sands, but Emily wanted to find out what the rest of Edmonton thought, so she hit the streets to find out.
What do you think about the oil sands?
I have mixed feelings about the oil sands.
I don't know, I just don't really like the whole oil industry at all.
When I hear oil sands, all I know is that it's like up north in like Fort McMurray, and that's about it. They don't even talk about it in school, really. Basically nothing's mentioned about that sort of aspect, which is strange because it's such a big part of like Alberta's economy.
I'm also going into environmental natural resource law, so on that end I'm actually kind of hoping that they stick around for a little bit so I have a job.
Do you think it's sustainable for our future?
No, not at all.
Well, to give you an idea of how intensive this project is, in Saudi Arabia, basically, you can go out and stick a straw in the desert and oil comes out. Here's a metaphor you can use for how difficult this tar sand is to actually make into something usable. So, you know that stuff that you use to pitch a roof, the tar that you use on a roof? Take a bucket of that, dump it into a sandbox, mix it around until all the sand's mixed up with this large pile of black, thick goop. Now take that thick goop, put it in your sink, and start pouring hot water over it and remove all the grains of sand until you're back to this big black goop with no sand in it. Right now, the tar sands are using our collective atmosphere as a dumping ground for free. If I own a small restaurant, I pay to put my waste somewhere. Most industries pay to put their waste away. The tar sands are using our atmosphere as a free dumping ground for their carbon emissions and whatever else is coming out of those smokestacks.
One of the biggest issues with tar sands production are tailing ponds. These are massive man-made dams that store toxic water used during oil extraction. Approximately 1.8 billion liters of waste are dumped into the ponds every day. Some ponds are so huge that they can be seen from space. Critics of the tar sands project say that their contaminants are seeping into the Athabasca River, causing irreversible environmental damage.
I was just speaking with a guy from CAT yesterday, and he was saying that the water was clean and it was being monitored.
There's modeling that shows that, in theory, this could be happening. But there has not been any seepage, per se, into the river, right.
Okay.
But we haven't seen any in the monitoring.
Industry has no idea in terms of how much leakage or seepage there are from the tailing lakes. They don't know. What we do know is we have independent studies that show that the Athabasca River and surrounding rivers have increased concentrations of all the type of chemicals we're talking about. Increased arsenic, increased mercury. Industry likes to say that 90% of that water is recycled. What that means is that it's never returned to the natural ecosystem. Instead, it ends up in these huge toxic tar pits that are full of a whole host of dangerous chemicals.
After hearing what the activists had to say, Emily tracked down oil company representatives and government officials in search of the pro-oil sands argument.
Now, I have a bit of confusion. Why do some people call it the oil sands, some people call it the tar sands? What is that about?
We use oil sands, and the government of Alberta uses oil sands because what's actually in the sand is oil. Ultimately, the tar is a man-made product, and oil is what comes from the oil sands.
Okay, interesting. Do you see oil and gas continuing to be used and developed in the 21st century? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
But that it's better for it to be developed here because there's environmental legislation, there's environmental protection law.
Right now, we are the only jurisdiction in the world, or certainly in North America, that has actually charged companies $15 a ton. And what we're doing with it is we're putting into a science and technology fund to develop new technologies to help us be even more environmentally friendly.
Emily's interview requests were turned down by all oil companies, except one,